If you enjoy this video, subscribe to Scarf and Goggles and check out our other content. A couple of years ago I posted a video telling the story of the Sunbeam 1000hp land speed car with which Henry Segrave set the record in 1927 at over 200 miles per hour. Today the car is one of the star exhibits at the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu. Shortly after I posted the video, the museum announced the launch of the Sunbeam 1000hp restoration campaign in partnership with Hampshire-based Brook Speed Automotive. The campaign aims to fund the restoration of the Sunbeam to running condition in time for its 100th anniversary in 2027. I recently visited Beaulieu to meet some of the team who are restoring the car and making that happen. In case you missed the original video about the Sunbeam 1000hp, also nicknamed the Slug or Mystery, here's a quick catch-up. In the 1920s, Henry Segrave was one of several famous names who raced at Brooklands, alongside Malcolm Campbell, John Parry Thomas and Kenelm Lee Guinness. Away from the racetrack, all of these men harboured ambitions to break the world land speed record and become the undisputed fastest man on Earth. Guinness set a record of 133 miles per hour in 1922 in an ex-Brooklands racer. Over the next 4 years, the record was broken several more times before Segrave himself broke the record in 1926, with a speed of 152 miles per hour. A month or so later, Segrave had barely finished celebrating when John Parry Thomas hiked the record again, achieving 172 miles per hour in Babs, a car powered by a 27-litre aero engine. The bar had now been raised beyond the reach of cars designed primarily to race at circuits. If you wanted the land speed crown, from now on you'd need a purpose-built machine. Wealthy Malcolm Campbell spared no expense in building his 22-litre Bluebird, and yet it only just beat Thomas's mark with a speed of 175 miles per hour in early 1927. Henry Segrave didn't have Campbell's money, but he was well connected at British car manufacturer Sunbeam. In addition to their car business, Sunbeam were prolific builders of aero engines, and they designed a car for Segrave powered by two of their own 22.4-litre V12 engines, together producing almost 1,000 horsepower. The twin-engine car was a monster, which shook the factory building when it was fired up. In 1927, the car was taken to run on the vast beach at Daytona, where Segrave became the first to drive at over 200 miles per hour. After returning home, Segrave demonstrated the car at low speed a couple of times before it was retired. Eventually it became part of the collection at Beaulieu, where it remains one of their star exhibits among several other famous land speed cars. It hasn't run in nearly 100 years, although all of that may be about to change. The National Motor Museum at Beaulieu in the south of England is home to a world-famous collection of over 280 vehicles, including examples from the earliest days of motoring, Formula One cars, famous cars, and of course their land speed collection, which features one of Malcolm Campbell's record breakers, the stunning Golden Arrow, the Sunbeam 1000hp, and Donald Campbell's 400 miles per hour Bluebird CN7. In April 2023, the Sunbeam was removed from the museum's land speed exhibit, and with the body lifted off and returned to the display, the restoration could begin. Ian Stanfield, known to everybody as Stan, is the museum's senior engineer and is leading the team aiming to return the Sunbeam to running condition.
What we're doing is we're restoring this car back to a working exhibit, because we believe that's the best thing to do to maintain and preserve this car. We've stripped it out totally now, and I'll show you the chassis in a minute where we've got to with that. The engine and the gearbox is all underway, and hopefully by the end of the year some of those components will be back in the chassis.
We'll take a closer look at the car's mechanicals when we visit the museum's workshop in the next episode. Meanwhile, the front engine is still on display along with the car's chassis and other components in the centre of the museum.
This is the front Matabele engine to the 1000 horsepower Sunbeam. We haven't stripped this engine out at all, other than remove a few of the auxiliaries like the magnetos, the harnesses for the spark plugs and everything else have been removed. But it's exactly the same as the other one that's in the workshop. You see here's the camshafts that are on top of the cylinder blocks. You can see the valve gear here on top of the cylinders. The cylinder blocks then bolt down to the crankcase, which is down below there. And on the front of the engine here, you can see all the oil pump drives and the water pump drive. Because as I said, it's a dry sump engine, so you've got a pressure pump that feeds the engine and another pump that sucks it out of the sump and returns it to the tank, and that just recirculates. The two carburetors for this engine are down in the V here. There's one at the back, one at the front. So it's almost like two engines the way it's set up. And the exhausts on this engine come out the side and then down out the side of the car. Whereas on the rear engine, they come out in stubs and they point up through the bodywork. It's quite a compact unit, basically because it's an aeroplane engine. And it was designed to be bolted onto the front of a World War I aircraft. 4 valves per cylinder. And this would be like the normally the back of the engine, because the drive comes out the other end, where you would then have the propeller onto a reduction gear at the front. So this is basically the back end of the engine. And on here you would have a rev counter drive, the 2 distributors for the air start mechanism, and on this engine there would be an air pump, and that just pressurizes the fuel tank to keep the fuel into the carburetors. You look on the back of the engine here, there's a little plate that's been left on, and it states that the engine will not start owing to vital parts of the mechanism being removed. From what I gather, that was typical of Segrave at the time. He didn't want people using his cars to take the record away from him. So they took the air start mechanism off it, although there was enough of it for us to reproduce it. So we've managed to do that. We're building the air start mechanism for the rear engine, and then we'll do it for this engine as well. This engine was started normally by the rear engine. On the back of this engine there is a clutch here which disengaged the engine from the gearbox. So they started the rear engine and then engaged that clutch, and then that bump started the front engine. Although it did have the air start mechanism, so you could independently start them. So now we're looking at the chassis. Underneath the chassis is various components. There's the front axle just laid on the floor there. All the springs would mount on here with the front axle. Jacking points were on here as well. Then we come up to the braking mechanism here. You'll see it's all cable brakes on it. There's no hydraulics or anything like that. It's all cable brakes that would have gone straight onto the front drums. All these little pulleys guiding the cable. You can see the side of the chassis there is just plate that's bent over and fabricated, and all the bits are just bolted to the chassis. But that's the original paint that's left on the chassis. We haven't taken any of that off. All we've done is clean it. And we've used a technique called soda blasting just to get all the dirt and rubbish off it, but it doesn't take all the paint off. And you see all the framework above it, which just holds the body. All the little under trays and things here just seal it all in, because it's flat bottomed, this car. It actually had ground effect. It was tested in a wind tunnel, you know, so there's no doubt that the ground effect was there, as it was with Golden Arrow as well. Didn't really need it because it weighed 4 tonne, you know, so we didn't really have to worry too much about it. On the floor here is one of the engine subframes. So that's all been cleaned. All the bearing mounts have all been cleaned and refurbished. The shims here that pack the engine up to the right height. And it was on one of these that we found a crack that we had to repair. Where it twists in the chassis, we had to repair a crack on that. So both engines are mounted on subframes, as is the gearbox, and the gearbox subframes under there on the other side. And they're all mounted in 3 points, so it gives the flexibility of the when the engine starts, it doesn't put a lot of stress through the chassis, otherwise it would break the chassis. All the cross shafts have been removed for the spring hangers and the brake shafts and things like that. So we're just about ready now to finally clean the chassis for the last time, and then it's going to go off and be clear coated. So to preserve the original markings and the builder's marks, which you can see from the other side. So what we have here is the rear axle. It looks like a jumble of bits at the moment, but it's a three-piece axle. So your stub axle is on the end where you have your wheels and your drum, then it comes along, drops down, and that centre section goes in, and then the other one comes back out. So it's a U section, and it was done like that so the engine could get lower in the frame. So quite complicated machining in that alone, because it's all made out of one billet again. It's not fabricated in any way. Beautiful machining again. All been crack tested and checked.
As Stan showed me round the bare bones of the car, it was becoming clear that the Sunbeam's long-held reputation as a parts bin special hid a huge amount of bespoke engineering and fine craftsmanship, and just how brave Henry Segrave had been to drive it.
If I go round the other side, I'll take the seat out and you should be able to see the numbers on there. And there are numbers on the side of the subframes. You see it, that one on there? All those original marks. So I don't know if you can see in there, on this panel here, there's the original build numbers. And here's the brake cables going to the rear wheels with the pulleys. And the brake cross shaft, which is still in, but that's the bit I'm going to take out next. So we can clean that up before we clear coat it. You can still see some of the soda blast material in the chassis there, which you need to take out.
Here we are in the cockpit.
Yep.
Offset cockpit.
Offset cockpit, because the gearbox is sat alongside Segrave there, and the drive shaft from the rear engine goes straight into the back of the gearbox, and then from the front of the gearbox goes to the front engine. The instruments sit here, the panel sits here. The instruments are away at the moment being overhauled, but they're not being restored. I don't want them restored, I just want them overhauled and functional. We want to keep the original patina on all the gauges and the faces, but I just want them functional. So basically what you've got is 4 oil pressure gauges, because you've got the main oil pressure for each engine and the camshaft oil pressure for each engine, different levels of pressure. You've got 2 temperature gauges, 1 for each engine, and you've got a rev counter, a single rev counter. You only need 1, because when both engines are linked together, they're doing the same speed. And 2 magneto kill switches, 1 for the front engine and 1 for the rear engine. And that's it. There's no need for any more instruments. There's no room for any more instruments, you know. And you wouldn't have had time to look at them anyway, so, you know.
The Sunbeam's target of 200 miles per hour was right at the limit of tyre technology in 1927, and Dunlop would only guarantee their tyres for 3.5 minutes at that speed, just enough for one run along the beach, before all 4 were changed for the mandated return run within 1 hour. If a tyre exploded at speed, flying debris posed a risk to both car and driver. Added to this was the prospect of the chains which drove the rear wheels snapping and inflicting terrible injuries. Sunbeam's solution was radical. They provided the car with armour plating.
Well, those big lumps of metal are actually the wheel arches. There's 4 of them, 1 for each wheel. They're extremely heavy, but they were meant to be heavy so that they could contain any flaying rubber. And the same with the chain guards at the back. They were extremely strong as well, because when the car went across to America, they were informed that Parry Thomas had lost his life at Pendine, and they were attributing that to the chain breaking. And they wanted to make sure that the chains on the 1000 horsepower Sunbeam were contained within the chain guards, which they were. There was no reason to worry about that.
In the next part, Stan talks me through the restoration of some of the mechanical components and shares a few of the Sunbeam's secrets, discovered almost 100 years after Henry Segrave drove his way into the history books. My thanks to Ian Stanfield and the team at Beaulieu for their help in making this video. If you'd like to find out more about how work on the car is progressing or make a donation to the restoration campaign, check out the link to Beaulieu's website in the description. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2.